Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. Deep in the heart of Camelot, under its towering stone walls and sprawling courtyards, lay a secret few knew, a secret long buried beneath the kingdom's thriving surface, forgotten by many, feared by even more. Merlin had seen it only in his dreams, a golden dragon, ancient and powerful, its massive scales shimmering with a glow that could outshine the sun. It was trapped in slumber, and yet, Merlin sensed the creature's restlessness, like the calm before a storm. Merlin stood alone in his chambers, gazing into the flickering flames of his hearth, haunted by the recurring nightmare. His mind was troubled, his thoughts heavy. Arthur trusted him with many things, but this was different. This wasn't just a threat to the kingdom, it was a danger that could rip apart the very fabric of existence. Morgana's name had appeared in the dream, intertwined with the dragon's awakening, and that terrified Merlin more than he cared to admit. Morgana's hunger for power had grown ever since she was cast out from Camelot. She had tasted the depths of dark magic, and it had corrupted her spirit. If she were to find the dragon before Merlin, she could control it, and with that power, no Oni and not even Arthur would be able to stop her. Camelot would fall, and Arthur's reign would be nothing more than a fleeting memory in the annals of history. With renewed resolve, Merlin threw his cloak over his shoulders and left his chambers. He needed answers, and there was only one place to get them: the ancient druids, keepers of the old ways, hidden deep in the wild forests far beyond Camelot's walls. As Merlin rode through the night, the moonlight barely illuminating his path, his mind wandered back to Arthur. His king, his friend, had no idea the peril that lurked beneath his feet. Arthur's attention was on the ongoing struggles to maintain peace across the kingdom, unaware that a single misstep could unleash a power so great it would reduce everything to ash. Merlin's loyalty to Arthur was unwavering, but he knew this was a burden he would have to carry alone. The druids, elusive as they were, would be Merlin's best hope. They had seen the rise and fall of many kingdoms and knew the ancient magic that Camelot was built upon. If anyone could provide guidance, it would be them. Days passed as Merlin ventured deeper into the wilds, the forest growing denser, its trees taller and more twisted, their bark almost black in the dim light. The air here was thick with magic, old and primal. It was said that no one entered these woods without permission from the druids, and those who did rarely returned. Yet Merlin moved forward, unafraid. The air around him felt alive, as if it were watching his every move, whispering his name. Finally, he reached a clearing where a circle of ancient stones stood, covered in moss and carved with runes so old that even Merlin couldn't decipher them. The druids appeared as if out of thin air, stepping forward from the shadows of the trees. They were tall and pale, their eyes glowing faintly, their robes blending into the natural surroundings. The leader, an elderly man with a long white beard, stepped forward. His name was Elian, and he had seen more than most mortals ever would. "You seek the golden dragon," Elian said, his voice deep and resonant. It wasn't a question. "You have seen its dreams." Merlin nodded, pulling his cloak tighter around him. "Morgana seeks to wake it. She means to control its power and use it to destroy Arthur's kingdom." Elian studied Merlin, his gaze penetrating. "The dragon's power is not easily tamed. It is bound by an ancient pact, forged long ago with the first king of Camelot. The pact cannot be broken unless one of great evil intervenes. Morgana seeks to break that pact." Merlin felt the weight of the druid's words. "How do I stop her?" Elian gestured toward the stones. "You must descend into the forgotten caverns beneath Camelot. There you will find the dragon. But be warned, Merlin, the way is perilous. Only one who is worthy may reach the dragon. The guardians of the pact will test you, and should you fail, Camelot will be lost." Without further words, the druids vanished back into the forest, leaving Merlin standing alone in the clearing. He had his answer, but the road ahead was far from easy. With renewed determination, Merlin turned his horse back toward Camelot. The journey back was faster, Though Merlin could not shake the growing dread that filled his heart, every moment he wasted brought Morgana closer to her goal, and the thought of her wielding the dragon's power chilled him to the bone. She had always been dangerous, but this would make her unstoppable. Upon returning to Camelot, Merlin wasted no time. He made his way to the old catacombs, long forgotten by most, hidden beneath the grand castle. The air down there was damp and cold, the walls covered in vines and ancient runes. It felt like walking into another world, one untouched by time. Every step echoed in the silence, the shadows closing in around him. As Merlin ventured deeper, he felt the magic grow stronger. It hummed in the air, ancient and powerful, like a living thing. He passed through narrow tunnels and vast, echoing chambers, the path becoming more treacherous with every step. The ground was uneven, and strange carvings marked the walls, telling stories of battles long forgotten, of dragons and men, of ancient alliances that shaped the world as it was. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and Merlin's breath came out in visible puffs. The first test was near. Ahead, the path was blocked by a massive stone door, engraved with intricate symbols of dragons and fire. Merlin reached out to touch it, and the door glowed briefly before it began to creak open, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The moment he stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind him, sealing him in. The chamber was dark, but at its center stood a statue of a dragon, carved from gold, its eyes gleaming with a faint, eerie light. As Merlin approached, the ground beneath him trembled, and the statue began to move. It wasn't a statue at all. The dragon's stone wings unfurled, and it let out a deafening roar, the sound reverberating through the chamber. Merlin raised his staff, his heart pounding in his chest. He had faced many enemies in his time, but this was something else. The dragon guardian towered above him, its eyes glowing with ancient magic, its scales gleaming like molten gold. "You seek the dragon of Camelot," the guardian growled, its voice deep and rumbling. "Only those of pure heart may pass. Are you worthy?" Merlin knew that brute force would not win the day here. He had to prove himself, to show that he was worthy of the dragon's trust. "I seek to protect Camelot," he said, his voice steady. "Morgana seeks to use the dragon for destruction, but I come to preserve the balance that has kept our kingdom safe for centuries." The dragon snorted, its eyes narrowing. "Words are easy, wizard, but actions speak louder. Prove your worth." With that, the dragon guardian lunged, its massive claws slashing through the air. Merlin barely had time to react, raising a shield of magic just in time to deflect the blow. The force of it sent him stumbling back, his heart racing. He had to think quickly, to find a way to prove his worth without resorting to violence. The dragon circled him, its eyes never leaving his. "Show me the heart of Camelot," it growled. "Show me the truth of your kingdom's spirit." Merlin took a deep breath, closing his eyes as he reached deep within himself, summoning the magic that flowed through him. He called forth the image of Camelot as it was, a kingdom of hope and justice, where people of all walks of life lived in harmony. He thought of Arthur, his unyielding sense of honor, and the sacrifices made to keep the kingdom safe. And most of all, he thought of the ancient pact, the agreement between dragon and king that had kept the kingdom whole for generations. When he opened his eyes, the dragon was still watching him, but its expression had softened. "You speak the truth," it said, its voice quieter now. "The pact holds, for now. But know this, Wizard Morgana is not far behind you. She seeks to break what you preserve." Merlin's heart sank. He had passed the first test, but the real challenge still lay ahead. He had to reach the dragon before Morgana did. The guardians stepped aside, allowing Merlin to pass into the next chamber. There, deep within the heart of Camelot, the golden dragon awaited him as slumbering, its power sealed, but not for much longer. Merlin stepped into the final chamber, his breath catching as he laid eyes on the slumbering beast. The golden dragon, Orion, was immense, even in its dormant state. Its scales shimmered with a faint glow, casting a warm light over the cavern. Merlin could feel the raw magic pulsing from the creature, like a heartbeat thrumming through the air. The dragon's tail coiled around its massive body, and its wings, though folded, seemed to stretch on for miles. Its eyes, though closed, still radiated an aura of power. The room was silent except for Merlin's soft footsteps. His heart raced as he approached Torian, knowing that Morgana was drawing closer with each passing moment. He could feel her dark presence like a shadow creeping through the caverns, relentless and hungry for the dragon's power. He had to act quickly. Merlin raised his staff, calling forth the magic within him. The air around him shimmered as he began to chant an ancient spell, one that would awaken the dragon in peace, binding it to the pact that had protected Camelot for centuries. As the words left his lips, the golden dragon stirred, a low rumble echoing from deep within its chest. Its great eyes fluttered open, revealing irises of molten gold that seemed to pierce straight through Merlin's soul. "Who dares disturb my rest?" Orion's voice rumbled, ancient and mighty, filling the cavern with its weight. The dragon's head lifted, and its gaze fixed on Merlin. For a moment, the power and age of the creature overwhelmed him, but Merlin stood his ground. "Great Orion," Merlin said, his voice steady but respectful, "I am Merlin, advisor to King Arthur of Camelot. I come not to harm you, but to preserve the ancient pact that binds you to this land." Orion's eyes narrowed, the glow intensifying. "The pact? It was forged in an age long past. Why do you come now, wizard? What threat brings you here to wake me?" Merlin took a deep breath, feeling the magic hum around him as he prepared to speak. "The sorceress Morgana seeks to control you, to break the pact and use your power to destroy Camelot. She is filled with hatred and will stop at nothing to see Arthur's reign fall. I came to warn you, to protect the balance that has kept our kingdom safe." The dragon's tail uncoiled slightly as it considered Merlin's words. There was a long, tense silence, the air thick with the weight of the dragon's deliberation. Then, Orion spoke, his voice deep and thoughtful. "Morgana Brokenbar have felt her darkness stirring in the land, like a storm gathering at the edges of the sky. She would seek to control me, to bend my power to her will. But I am not so easily swayed, wizard. The pact that binds me is strong." Before Merlin could respond, the air in the cavern grew cold, and a dark mist began to seep in through the cracks in the stone walls. Morgana had arrived. Her presence filled the chamber, thick with malice and dark magic. From the shadows, she stepped forward, her black robes flowing like liquid night, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. "Merlin," she hissed, her voice low and venomous, "I should have known you would interfere." "Morgana," Merlin said, turning to face her, his hand tightening around his staff. "You cannot control this dragon. You know nothing of the pact or the power it holds." Morgana's lips curled into a wicked smile. "I know more than you think, Merlin. The dragon's power is bound by ancient magic, but magic can be broken. I will not be stopped by the likes of you." With a flick of her wrist, Morgana unleashed a wave of dark energy, sending it hurtling toward Merlin. He raised his staff just in time to conjure a shield, the two forces clashing with a deafening crack. The impact sent shock waves through the chamber, shaking the very foundations of the cavern. Orion let out a low growl, his massive form shifting as the conflict unfolded before him. "You're a fool, Morgana," Merlin said through gritted teeth, struggling to hold the shield. "You think you can control Orion, but his power is far beyond anything you could ever hope to command." Morgana sneered, her eyes narrowing. "We shall see, Merlin, we shall see." With a snarl, she unleashed another blast of dark magic, more powerful than the first. Merlin struggled under the weight of it, his shield flickering as he strained to keep it intact. The ground beneath them cracked, and the air grew thick with the raw energy of their battle. But Morgana was relentless. She pushed harder, her magic fueled by her hatred for Arthur and her lust for power. Merlin's shield faltered, and he was thrown back, his body slamming against the stone wall with a sickening thud. He groaned in pain, struggling to rise as Morgana approached, her hands crackling with dark energy. "Your time is over, Merlin," she said coldly, raising her hand to deliver the final blow. But before she could strike, a deafening roar filled the chamber. Orion's massive form rose to its full height, his eyes glowing with fury. The dragon's wings unfurled, casting a shadow over the entire cavern. With one mighty sweep of his tail, he sent Morgana flying across the room, crashing into the far wall with a force that knocked the breath from her lungs. "You seek to command me, sorceress?" Orion's voice boomed, shaking the very earth beneath them. "You seek to wield my power for your petty ambitions? You are nothing." Morgana, though injured, rose slowly to her feet, her eyes blazing with rage. "I am Morgana, rightful ruler of Camelot. You will bow to me, dragon, or you will be destroyed." Orion let out a low, dangerous growl. "You are a fool if you think you can destroy me. I was born before your kind walked this earth, and I will exist long after you are dust." With that, the dragon unleashed a torrent of golden flame, the heat so intense that the very air seemed to burn. Morgana barely had time to raise a protective barrier, the flames crashing against it with the force of a hurricane. Sweat poured down her face as she struggled to hold the barrier, her dark magic straining against the overwhelming power of Orion's fire. But even Morgana, with all her power, was no match for the golden dragon. The barrier began to crack, fissures spreading like spiderwebs across its surface. Morgana's eyes widened in fear as she realized that she could not hold it for much longer. "Enough!" Merlin's voice rang out, cutting through the roar of the flames. He had risen to his feet, his staff glowing with a brilliant light. "Orion, stop! Killing her will only feed the darkness she seeks to unleash. There is another way." Orion paused, his eyes shifting to Merlin. The dragon's gaze was fierce, but there was a glimmer of understanding there. He retracted his flames, the air cooling as the fire subsided. Morgana fell to her knees, gasping for breath, her energy nearly spent. "What would you have me do, wizard?" Orion asked, his voice still heavy with power. "She seeks to break the pact. She seeks to destroy your kingdom." Merlin stepped forward, his eyes locked on Morgana. "Morgana is lost, consumed by her desire for power. But the pact is strong. If we bind her to it, she will never be able to wield the dragon's power again." Morgana's eyes snapped up, fury blazing in them. "You cannot bind me. I am more powerful than you could ever imagine." Merlin shook his head. "No, Morgana. Your power comes from darkness, and darkness will always destroy itself in the end." With that, Merlin began to chant, his voice low and steady, the words of the ancient spell filling the chamber. Orion joined in, his deep voice resonating through the air, adding to the magic that swirled around them. The ground beneath Morgana began to glow, runes appearing around her, binding her in place. Morgana screamed, thrashing against the magic that held her. But it was no use. The pact had been reforged, stronger than before. She would never again be able to control Orion or any dragon. Her power was sealed. As the spell ended, Morgana collapsed to the ground, her strength gone, her ambition thwarted. Orion lowered his massive head, his eyes softening as he regarded Merlin. "You have done well, wizard. The pact holds once more, and I will return to my slumber. But no Thesa should Camelot ever call upon me in a time of true need, I will rise again." Merlin nodded, his body exhausted but his heart filled with relief. "Thank you, Orion. Camelot is safe because of you." The dragon gave a final nod before turning, his massive form retreating back into the shadows of the cavern. Merlin watched as the golden light faded, leaving the chamber in silence once more. The danger had passed, but the memory of it would linger. As Merlin made his way back through the caverns, his mind was already on the future. Morgana would not stop, not as long as she lived. But for now, Camelot was safe. And that was enough.